The views and opinions expressed by the guests on this podcast are purely their own and do not necessarily reflect the official position of the podcast or the interviewer. Hello, welcome to Layered Wisdom, a podcast about life experiences and the ripples they leave behind. I'm your host, Awino. Layered Wisdom can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please follow us on Instagram at Layered Wisdom Podcast. Coming up on Layered Wisdom.
It's a beautiful, difficult lesson to learn. Yeah. Because really, when I now reflect on all of my loved ones, the reason why I hold them so fondly is because I was fully there with them. Like, even just now, as you started to tell me that boxing analogy, Oti's memory came back to my mind. Like, I could hear him recounting that story when he was going, the ref was going, 1, 2. So,
wow, you're doing the accent.
I had that story so many times. It's like, but the presence to be there, just with people fully, like just in that complete moment, fully, that's what people need.
Welcome to today's episode. Our guest today wears a plethora of hats. He is a renowned author, satirist, curator, columnist, mentor, and executive coach. He is a gifted writer who masterfully crafts real-life experiences into vivid tapestries. I recently read his book, Strength and Sorrow, and to call it a book is a gross understatement. It is much more than a book. It's an ode to departed loved ones. It's a catalyst for self-reflection, and it is a mirror that lays bare the reader's own unresolved grief. Jackson Biko, the brilliant and amazing Kenyan author and triathlete, wrote, "Strength and Sorrow is about the human heart. It's an elegy, a wake of words." Oyunga Pala, welcome.
Thank you very much, Awina. Thank you.
Your book was truly a profound read for me. It's not often that I read a book and bring out my highlighter pen and my page markers, and just because I know there's specific sections that I'll need to come back to. So thank you for writing it.
No, thank you. Thank you for reading.
In the foreword, Sam Opondo refers to the importance of conversations required to make the good death thinkable. The good death is a concept I recently just encountered when I was interviewing a death doula. Her name is Archie. She's based in Kenya.
Right.
And so I'd never heard of the concept of a good death before. So what's a good death to you?
So there's a kind of classic, at least the way it's framed in the Western world, where a good death is basically a mediated death, right? So and usually it's a medical mediated death, where all the affairs are kind of taken care of, and you kind of get prepared for death, So your end of life affairs are kind of neatly wrapped up. That's one version of looking at it. That's how socially, at least, it's known as. So when they talk about within the death industry, when they talk about a good death, that's what they're talking about. This mediation, this level of elements of control that allow kind of that guide the end of life process. I think in the reference to what Sam writes in the introduction, or rather in the foreword, is a good death in the sense of that connotes a good life, so that it's then people who are kind of eulogizing the person who has passed on, who then infer to it as a good death. The fact that you lived well, you lived fully, you impacted people completely. So in reflection upon your passing, your death just brings about a lot of goodness around. So then it's considered a good death. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I've never thought about it from that perspective. I've only ever, since I heard about the concept of a good death and just in hearing about it, reading about it, you're exactly
Yeah.
right. I think I was reading about it from the perspective of the Western lens, which
Yeah.
was, are your affairs in order? Do
Yeah.
people know what happens to your
Yeah.
material effects once you pass away? Do people know
Yeah.
whether you want to be buried or cremated or
Yeah.
aquamated or whatever other methods there are? But I like the idea of this person lived a good, full life and now they've gone. And that's why sometimes I think they're termed a celebration of life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. In fact, if like I'm Luo from my bed, which is basically he died well. Yeah. So the whole concept of dying well, which is basically a good death, was to live well. And to live well was basically to live as humanly as possible, like to experience your full humanity. Because then that's what gives you the like a real spectrum of kind of experiences, for people to be able to embrace you fully. So and you can only know that at a person's death, because the amount of people who show up to acknowledge the passing of this individual become kind of a testament to his life. So it's less about,
Mm,
you can never know it when somebody's alive, It's only at the point of death that you can decide, this is actually a good death. Because then you look at the humanity that shows up to acknowledge the passing of this individual, then you realize, okay, uh, yeah, he was exceptional in this way and that way. Yeah.
yeah, that's a great perspective. In another part of the book, your sister Nyangi, who, by the way, I've referred to as what I consider to be a spiritually evolved person, she introduces the concept that we are not our bodies. And I'm going to read what she wrote.
Okay.
We depend on it. Illness, pain, and aging come to reside in it. When these bodies reach the end of illness, pain, and aging, they break down and die. That is not us dying. We only know about the corpse that is not breathing. That
Yeah.
is what we call death. And then in another part of the book, you say these bodies that we are so attached to, are they really ours? They are born, they change, and they die on their own. We can't stop them from doing that. So whose body is it, Oyunga? Whose body
it's
is it?
it's it's more of like, if you think about it, it's almost like you're saying, whose suit is it? You know?
Mm.
So it's the question of who's the wearer. And so,
Ah.
so just to realize that the suit is not the wearer, and we're so caught up in the suit, the suit, the suit, the suit, the suit, like almost a uniform for this dimension. Huh? But ultimately, that's not. That's just something you're putting on. But who's the person that's wearing that suit? That's behind this suit, and that becomes now basically the quest of life.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to tell you, I wrestled when I first, because again, completely new concept, right?
Yeah.
So I was just sitting there like, but whose body? It's my body. And then I was thinking, but is it, you don't really have total control over it and what it does in terms of especially time, right?
Yeah.
S- yeah, I had to sit with that
Yeah.
one. That was when I broke out my highlighting pen.
I guess, yeah, but that was my sister. That was a really profound, because she writes it in the poem at the beginning of the book.
Hmm.
So, and then that's kind of what sets the tone for everything in the book, literally. That's why that poem was so significant for me, because it pretty much just captured everything that I tried to explain. I mean, she said she puts it down in less than 10 lines. I needed like about 290 something pages to make the point. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, she was a very just eloquent writer. Did not waste words, did not
yeah, yeah. No,
it's
that she
very
was.
beautifully
Yeah, that she
written.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you did something that I found to be very insightful, which is providing the reader with a look into your psyche. So you say that part of grieving is about seeking permission to tell your own story. And you're
yeah,
also candid about feeling more comfortable discussing the pain of others while suppressing your own.
yeah,
This is something I notice is a common thread, especially in African men. Why do
yeah.
you think men feel the need to suppress, especially vulnerability? Anger is okay to express, but vulnerability is, and to be fair, it's not even an African man thing. I think it's just men globally.
Yeah.
Is it how you're raised? Do you think you'll be seen as weak? Like, what is it?
No, it's just a social reality. You will be seen as weak. It's a social reality. It's just how society has kind of been I guess, negotiates with some of these positions. Huh? First of all, in terms of the spectrum of expression, for men, I like to say is generally just either exuberance, which is
Mm-hmm.
joy, or anger, right? So in a way, it's best portrayed in the caricature of a happy drunk, and a crazy drunk. That's almost like the two versions of men. Like, wow, you're so happy, or it's a crazy drunk. But either
Mm-hmm.
way, that's the spectrum of emotion. That's that's generally we're socialized towards. And it's only because something as complex as grief, huh? So grief in itself is not an event. So so I think what happens is that men express vulnerability in ways that typically not acknowledged, right? Because there's a lot of kind of cultural coding in terms of how people want to see vulnerability, you know, and it has to come this way. So if a man is not kind of sitting down and pouring his heart out, then we like to say, oh, he's not vulnerable. But there's different ways in which people kind of show their vulnerability, you know, and it goes a lot with kind of the cultural coding. So in certain societies, like where I come from, like the Luo people of Kenya, typically we are allowed to kind of show emotion, right? Typically,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of changes it, of course, is once everybody runs across colonization, huh? And we all kind of become this Europeanized, and so we take up in this kind of this European ideal of stoicism, right? Our ideal of stoicism was very different because we knew our warriors would basically cry in pain, So like a real warrior was like if somebody's mother died and you didn't cry for your mother, then we were like, what kind of man are you, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But it's now once Christian theology started to come in and we started taking kind of the stoic form, we kind of forgot how to show vulnerability. So in essence, the vulnerability is there, which is why then now when it shows off, when you see it at least play out within at least and I speak within a very specific cultural context, which I kind of prefer, because there's always this idea of man being a single story, yeah, which is also I don't know, it's problematic, huh? Yeah, is that we do so when it's when so when that's why the reason I find it difficult to answer a question like that is that when I really opened my eyes, I realized, no, men have been vulnerable around me all the time. So I just realized, oh, okay.
Okay.
I was just looking at the wrong kind of men. But yeah, people have been hence that funeral scene that I described. When I thought about it, all the strong men I knew had been breaking down and crying. Now, the people who were not being vulnerable in the way I understood vulnerability, which is basically show of tears, no, but I've seen my old men and I see how they are vulnerable, how they show their vulnerability. Like my dad, when I look at him now in reflection, you know, these guys would sit in corners and just basically moan, They would just, they'll do it like more into quietness and just moan, for. And now when I play back those scenes, and I, for example, I play back a scene of my father at my uncle's funeral, right? My uncle being my mother's older brother, and he was like a peer of my father. There's a man called Otieno Pala. He was a peer of my father, so they were quite close, you know. Um, and I remember at his funeral, while everybody, and this guy was kind of like a big man, and he died in a road accident, so it's kind of a very emotional, tragic funeral, and right at the height of his career, yeah, a man still in his 50s. So, and I remember my father sitting at the back with us, the young kids, and just kind of sitting. And I wondered why. It took me a very long time. It took me years to figure out why wasn't he sitting at the bench there. Then I realized the guy, he was so close to Francis, he couldn't afford to sit in the front because he'd have broken down.
Mm.
So in a way to show his vulnerability, he literally went back to in the safety of family. So when I looked back, that men have been vulnerable all around, but we just kind of we have a very narrow spectrum of what we assume to be the display of manifestation of vulnerability. But if you look at it broadly within a cultural context, no, men have actually been quite vulnerable.
Okay, that makes sense. You touched on something there that I think is very important, which is just because vulnerability is not being expressed in the way you would expect or the way you yourself would express it,
Yeah,
doesn't mean it's not being expressed.
yeah. No, and one of the things about vulnerability, and I really understood it, is death is literally, it became the perfect theater for me to see it. Because it was this idea that everybody kind of understood, not everybody, but I'm using this loosely, that Thor, death is real,
hmm
you know, and it can discombobulate everything. So there's that kind of humility of like at a funeral that you looked at all the strong men and you saw that kind of, especially when like those really close to them. So I hence seeing my father and Francis who were like peers. And when Uncle Frank dies and my dad is just, you can see the shock. And then my dad dies 2 years after that.
Mm.
So now when I look at now that picture and I think, this man was going through a serious contemplation moment. Yeah.
Mm. And you also write about death always managing to shock us, even when we are forewarned and prepared. And, again, just back to your point, which is the gravity of death at some point hits everyone. And I remember when my grandmother passed away in 2018, she had been sick for a while. So her death wasn't um, unexpected in the sense that we could see she was declining.
Yeah.
But I still remember when I got that phone call, just being shocked, and yeah, it's just strange how that happens, even when someone's been ailing and is in her 90s and, it's all the signs point to the person is going to be going soon. It's still shocking when it happens.
Yeah, because I guess it's the end. You know what I mean? So it's like when you think about it, like literally. I mean, if you think of the umbilical cord, it's like something has been cut, and at that,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be snipped, you know. But until it's actually been snipped, then there's almost like a release, and if you truly were attached to that person, you've that loss is immediately felt, irrespective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's immediately felt. So so I guess that's what happened. I mean, it's in a way, even when even the so-called kind of preparation, uh, even when you're sitting right there watching that person, and they've told you, hey, kwaheri,
Mm.
yeah, like, oh, this is my last one. You're like, okay, I'm going to sleep, and they take off. Even then, you still feel it, right? Because it's a cord has been cut, and naturally, what your system is telling you is that you no longer have access to them in this form, in
Mm-hmm.
this physical form, right? So immediately that's an immediate shock to the system because suddenly a part of them has been cut off. Like in a way, a part of them has died, right? Like if you think
Yeah,
about those like your grandmother, she was literally a part of your entire universe. So by her
she
physical
was. Yeah.
presence dying, a part of you has also died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess that's why you we said the body has its reasons, huh? So then the body registers as a kind of a shock. Yeah, always. Which is why these rituals are so important. These rituals are so important. These death rituals are imperative because they help us go through this series of shocks that we'll go through our whole life anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen anyway. This is a bizarre thing about life sometimes. Like we act out. I mean, guys have better Christmas plans. The guys have like ask a guy what he's doing on the 25th, but he'll break that down. so 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 it's sad. It's just sad, man. That's just what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting that time period, and when you were describing when your sister passed away and you had to get on the next flight to Nairobi to sorry
Yeah. Entebbe. Yeah.
yeah, I distinctly remember just immediately booking the next flight, and I remember arriving at Jomo Kenyatta 22 hours later.
Uh,
And, at the time, those immigration people would ask you, I don't think they had the scanners yet. Then I think that was when they still opened your suitcases to check
yeah.
what you brought in. And the guy asks me, what's the purpose of your visit? I don't know what I told him, but whatever I told him, he just waved me off. He was just like, I can't.
Pole.
She clearly has bigger problems than
Uh,
whatever it is I'm about to ask her. In another part of the book, you mention a near-death experience, right? And you describe something that I've heard over and over again, which is in these near-death experiences, people say they feel like they were outside of their body observing their body.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned observing your body sprawled on the tarmac and asking yourself, is this how I die?
Yeah.
All these years later, when you look back at that time, does it feel, I don't know what the word is, I'm struggling to find the word, but does it feel like what was that moment, or does it feel, okay, I think I've wrapped my mind around it?
No, I wrapped my mind about it at that moment, at that
Oh,
very moment.
oh.
That was it. The
It
lesson
was
was done.
instant.
There was no reflection afterwards. Like I got the point immediately. Like, I get it. I'm not the body. Thank you, universe.
Wow, that was
Yeah.
a quick that was a quick full immersion course. Like, wow, it's like someone teaching you what's under the ocean by pulling
Yeah,
you down to the
just pulling
ocean
you down.
bed.
You're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, take me back to the surface. I'll redirect my ways. Never
Oh,
leaving
that's
my life
funny.
jacket at home. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the concept of deaths without funerals? Have you heard of that before?
I'm not. No, not sure. I'm kind of relating it to something I've had here, but yeah. But please explain to me, what is
Okay.
it?
So let me give you a very simple example. Think of a couple that's been trying to have children for
Yeah.
years and years and years, and they, for whatever reason, they can't have children, right? When they got married, they wanted to have children together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that was a dream, a hope, something, right? And the moment when they find out they cannot have children, something has died. The part of
Yeah.
them that was going to be parents is gone, right?
Yeah.
So that's the death. If they don't take the time to grieve that, they will never truly move forward with their lives, because there's something that's died. There's a part of them that's died that will never become true, whatever the reason is, right?
Yeah.
So and that happens in many, many ways. And I thought about that when you were talking about earlier, just for example, my grandmother's death,
Yeah.
and you mentioning, there's a part of my identity that was very much tied to being her granddaughter, right?
Yeah.
And now that she's no longer physically here, that relationship, myself as the granddaughter of Amolo, is gone, right?
Yeah.
And so it's easier to grieve that because there's an actual death. But if
Yeah.
it's a death that's not a physical death, that's not and I thought about this when I was reading about your transition out of your career, writing for the Nation. And if you don't take the time to grieve that, then that's something that's going to just pop up randomly in future, and you won't know what the issue is.
Yeah. 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 I suppose. Yeah. I guess I kind of call it. I guess I kind of call it loss. Like, yeah, like loss. That hence the subtitle, "Reflections of the Ones We Lost." You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so just basically the totality of loss. Like the nature of life is just basically mini deaths. It's just a multiplicity of deaths throughout your life. And you've got to keep on dying to old selves in order to kind of to be reborn. And it happens over and over and over and over again in your life, until basically you get to a state of basically what Carl Jung used to call individuation, where like all separate parts of yourself become integral and you become a whole. And that's pretty much, at least in my view, the whole point of existence. So then what becomes really important on this journey is the ability to grieve, and to know how to grieve, and to recognize what it is that you're grieving. Because in accepting those parts of you that are gone, you're kind of always integrating your whole over and over, like progressively over time. So it's in a way, it's something that happens very like, almost like the growth of a child. So many multiplicity of things are happening. We just kind of focus on what we see as the physical attributes. They were crawling at one point, then they start to, sit upright, and then before you know it, they're walking, and then they're running. But all the same processes are happening internally. So if you think about then the opposite version of that, as soon as we're born, we pretty much start the dying process.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole parts of us that are dying all the time. And if we don't know how to grieve properly and lay them down, then there's no possibility for us to grow. or we end up basically spinning in that orbit until, quote unquote, we learn the lesson that allows us then to keep on evolving. So I look at loss as basically part of life. You know, you will be losing all the time. You're losing all the time. There's always parts of us that are dying. What we lack is the awareness to recognize what's going on. Yeah,
In the
yeah,
moment
yeah,
as it's
exactly.
happening.
Yeah, so that's what typically we lack. Just the ability to recognize, oh, so this is what I'm going through. So like that famous biblical phrase, there's a time to cry, there's a time to laugh, there's a time to, the famous,
To
yeah,
reap and to sow. Yeah.
yeah. So it's really that. So it's always knowing when it's the time for mourning. That's the one we kind of we forget, because we tend to look at mourning as the spectacle of only death. But there's a lot that we are mourning all the time. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right that when someone dies, what is considered an undignified death, after the platitudes and the veneer of politeness, people often whisper about the circumstances of the person's death. That is so interesting because I know someone who was struggling with addiction and died. And when at his funeral, and he was pretty young, he was in his late 20s. And at his funeral, obviously people were talking and whispering, and his mom heard. And so she stands up and she just says, listen, my son was addicted to alcohol and drugs, and he died from that. And he was not doing these things alone, right? And she's pointing, she's like, many of you, you, while he's drinking mates and, you're all hanging out together. So I know, you're next. If you don't change your ways, if you don't go get help, you're next, and it was, I mean, obviously people now just shut up because they're like, she's naming names. So when you wrote that, I was thinking, yeah, it's true. Initially, people were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And then they start whispering, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's just the human condition. I guess the social condition is that because we tend to live life at a very kind of surface level, we judge based on basically surface projections. So we look at, so in a way, in fact, one of the whole problems is just literally the prescription of addiction. The addiction itself is not the problem. What it's masking is what the issue is.
Exactly. Yeah.
We fixate on the addiction. Oh, he drinks. Oh, no, he smokes. Oh, he does drugs. Oh, he does that. Yeah, but that's just, yeah, but what's he hiding from? What's he trying to numb? What's he coping with that the addiction serves? And so in a way, when you think about it in life, everybody's an addict of something.
Yep.
Only that in this moral spectrum, with it's always naturally good and bad, because it's always a majority prerogative. Oh, okay, these are the good addictions. Oh, you can take as much sugar as you want. Those are good addictions. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But this is the addictions. Oh, no, that's too bad. So it's really just kind of like moral imperatives. But ultimately, everybody's suffering some level of addiction because everything, even those of us who go to church, in a kind of obsessive way. It's something that we're hiding from. It's something that we're masking. It's something that addiction then basically fulfills for us. So so it's that lack of understanding that then kind of creates this kind of conversation there, especially at the point of death, because then we that's all we know, and that's all we have seen, because there's this ideal of how life should be lived, and this acknowledgement of life and its challenges in its complete vulnerability and totalness is just not something we're used to. All right. So there's this moral idea of moral purity that we kind of stick with. And so then really, when you think about it, low level addictions like alcohol and drugs are kind of now made to be look like the worst things. I mean, your typical dictator will be called, we never say, oh, he's addicted to killing. No. Oh, but no, he's drunk too much beer. Like, really?
Oh gosh. You also write about funeral ceremonies where men and women who've become invisible to their families had to die. before they could be loved again. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a recent video that was doing the rounds
Yeah.
of this woman whose, it sounds like her mother was ailing for a while,
Yeah.
and she had many sisters, and they were nowhere to be found until the funeral. And
Yeah.
at the funeral, they stood up and gave speeches about how they supported their sister and how they were there for her, only for their niece, her daughter, to stand up and say, "No, you were not here. You did not help us. You did not visit us. you, you were nowhere to be found." And of course, the discourse then moved to this Gen Zs are disrespectful. But
Yeah.
I was like, but is she lying though?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's. I mean we laugh, but it's true, as Trevor Noah used to say. Dave Chappelle used to say that. No, yeah, but we laugh, but it's true, and yeah, it's really sad. That's answer the quote for me because I saw it so many times happening. I'm like, uh, if you really want to know how much people love you, try dying fast.
Try dying. I
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
that.
It's like wow, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of how do I put it in polite language? There's a kind of immaturity of society
Mm.
um where we really because I guess because until you really engage with your own personal human condition, like truly engage with the totality of who you are as a person, then it's very easy to project and judge, right? Yeah, because then literally a lot of what we are projecting out there are basically our own internal flaws, right? So unfortunately for us, a lot of what we is in display in terms of at least dominant media is this other shadow aspects of ourselves. Higher principles rarely make it to the forefront,
Mm.
because it's not as though they don't exist. They do. You know what I mean? There's other more kind of higher principled ways of living life or navigating this life, huh? But they rarely do. And when they do, they're kind of crowded in so much kind of esoteric and spiritual language that it's pretty much sometimes lost in translation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the simplicity of it is just little this core understanding of a shared humanity that death brings us to. Like these are processes that we all go through. So then ultimately the whole point of life is basically school. You're here to learn from everything from birth to death, and everything in between. Until you really arrive at that point, we are likely to just basically persist in this level of minimization because our own internal universes are so small, we then project that on everything around us, right? But if our capacities have kind of becoming larger and bigger, then there's no such thing as a pointless death. Everything, even somebody dying in Fiji today that hits you on the news, tells you about something about your reality. You know, everything. Because there's a kind of you get to a point of where there's an interconnectedness in everything, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and once you get that, then you move out of that spectrum of just basically belittlement. Yeah.
And then you also write about your brother Otieno. And
Yeah.
there's a part of the book that I found just to be really funny. So the referee dropped to Vika's side and started one of the slowest countdowns ever witnessed in boxing history, pleading with the champion to get up and save face. I was just picturing, someone just slowly raise. I don't know if you've watched Zootopia, but like the sloth in Zootopia, like slowly raising his hand.
Like,
Wow.
wow.
That was really funny.
Yeah.
Um, and then it sounds like your brother obviously did not speak much about, especially towards the end of his life, right? And it just kind of, for me, especially as we were talking earlier about how vulnerability is expressed, in hindsight, looking at your brother's final months, especially, do you feel like he was vulnerable or do you feel like he was more stoic?
I think that's what I was saying. I think he was expressing vulnerability, right? Because in a way, when you're really close to somebody, it's all in the unsaid, right? By the time I have to
Mm.
tell you that, hey, we know, I'm hurting. That I'm not really safe with you. But I was like, I hope you're seeing it already, and you're doing the appropriate action.
Right.
you know, so you know, so I have to spell it out. Like, okay, here's the thing. This is what I'm really going through.
Yeah.
No, because
Yeah.
half the time I don't know. I'm just know I'm drowning. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And so now when I think about it in hindsight, I was like, no, actually, he was being vulnerable. All right, in a way, that kind of the quietness, the very reflective, contemplative states,
Mm-hmm.
were really that, you know, and in a way, that's why I say in hindsight, I look back and I think I learned my lesson, and instinctively, I think I did what was needed at the moment, which is just basically presence.
Mm,
I was there. You know, I was there. I was just literally by his side, and that's kind of then when I think about it, hence the reason why we ended up being so tight. When you think about our age difference, like I'm literally his kid, bro. Not even like
mm-hmm.
his younger, yeah, his kid, bro. That's like 11 years difference, huh? Yeah. In most cultures, that's an uncle. But we were so tight, we were so close all through. And when you think about it, in hindsight, that was basically him showing vulnerability. That listen, I can allow my small brother, I can lean on my small brother,
Mm.
you know, and I'm not afraid. I don't have to ask. I don't have to tell him. You know what I mean? I don't have to tell him, oh, by the way, this is, and it looks like a crazy time now. He just knows to show up, And so then what I was doing for my brother was always showing up. So he never had to look to the side and wonder, hey, where are people? No, he'd always look and I'm right there. And I'm like, okay, I don't have much to say. I'm just, because that's what he needed at the time.
Yeah.
When I really started to really think about it deeply, I realized actually men are showing a vulnerability. It's just not in the language you've been socialized to kind of read vulnerability. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
we're so fixated on words. Like, tell me what's going on. Tell me. Hmm.
Yeah, I call it the
Uh,
Inquisition style of
yeah. He didn't say anything. Yeah, but he showed. He showed it to you. Yeah. Hmm.
you wrote that there's no time for fear, regret, or panic when life is slipping away. The loved one doesn't need your sorrow. Every moment matters because that's all you can hold, this present.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, difficult lesson to learn. Yeah. Because really, when I now reflect on all of my loved ones, the reason why that I hold them so fondly is because I was fully there with them. Like, even just now, as you started to tell me that boxing analogy, Oti's memory came back to my mind. Like, I could hear him recounting that story when he was going, the ref was going, 1, 2. So
Wow, you're doing the accent.
I had that story so many times. It's like, so, but the presence to be there just with people fully,
Mm.
like just in that complete moment fully, that's what people need. The last thing someone needs to be told, oh, feel sorry for you, oh, pole, oh, just I be, oh, okay, yeah, he's doing that already every
Sorry.
night. Just needs to feel normal for a change.
For
Yeah.
those who don't understand, Yasai Biro means God is
Sun is
coming.
coming. Yeah. So, so, so
Oh.
the guy was just, yeah. So in a way, that it's the power of presence, and I write the same story again. What happens with me when I'm in Yangi's last rites,
Mm.
um, and this canon, this guy now is a bishop, shows up and just stands alongside me, and I can't remember a thing he said during that. Yeah, I mean, he's a really smart theologian, like he speaks really well, kind of an intellectual on the pulpit, huh? Um, I can't remember a thing he said. I cannot remember a word he said. And I know he said some brilliant things, you know? But the thing I can never forget was his presence.
Mm-hmm.
That he was just there. Like I turned around and, ooh, okay, there's a pastor here. Okay, everything's going to be good. Yeah. Yeah. So in a way, I felt very reassured. Yeah.
I think it just reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote. You'll forget what people said. You'll forget what they did, but you'll never forget how they made you feel.
Exactly.
Right.
Precisely. Yeah.
And then going off on a tangent. So I've never been to Madare,
Yeah.
but your description is so vivid that
Yeah.
it took me to that place. And you
Yeah.
describe it as a city within a city where
Yeah.
complete despondence rides side by side with cheerfulness. And then you also describe children who have never met their fathers or have
Yeah.
never seen men in their 40s who are not drunkards or in ruin.
Yeah.
Wow. You painted a picture there.
It's sobering, I mean, it's really sobering. And especially for us Kenyans, this idea that we've got this inner cities, huh? Uh, they're literally boils of the city, like and that are completely forgotten, completely marginalized, eh? and
Mm.
deliberately and systemically just kept in abide. And that's the sad thing. It's like it's so hard to escape from that ecosystem. It's so hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those people work the hardest, you know, but people are entrapped, So to be invited into these spaces and to really look, not to come there as a kind of like, oh no, like spectator, but to really invest time to really look.
Mm.
And of course, the only way you can really look is you're shown. People have to show you their world. And this is a privilege that I got at Madare, where all this young man just pretty much just held my hand and just said, okay, let's teach you how to see the world from this end of things, you know. And when they showed it to me, I couldn't unsee it. I looked at the unfairness of it all,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, wow, what the only thing that I can really do here is to lend my thinking, like sincere thinking, to resolutions, and for me, I just basically turned to my art, and and one of the highlights of at least that particular project, which is called the Madare Green Movement, is that cohort is continuing to produce art, like beautiful
Yeah.
music, um, the group is called Madara Empire. They released a song called 61 Suspects. It's on YouTube right
Mm-hmm.
now. Huh?
Okay.
And it's beautiful, like completely conscious music. Huh? So in a way, one of the lessons of working in Madare was, we're
Mm.
always going to Madare, especially as outsiders, to kind of try and figure it out, not like trying to kind of quote unquote solve the problems for them, huh? Completely forgetting that no, people have complete agency. If we just took a moment to just shut up for a change and listen, everything we need to know they're telling you already.
Because they live it.
So what they require is real solidarity. People who can show up and say, okay, we'll sit here with you and let's try and work something out. And so
Mm.
that's what Madare kind of it really kind of reframed for me the reality of class dynamics in Nairobi. Because we hear it, we talk about it, but we don't understand its extent and how well engineered it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the book that I just found to be so striking about poverty. So, poverty is hard work. It is to wake up at 4 a.m. and walk for 2 hours from Mathare to the leafy suburbs in the early morning cold of Nairobi. It is to smile as you open the gate for a posh tenant who has walked all of 10 meters from his rented apartment to his parked car and lost his cool because he had to wait for 2 minutes. It is to lie to your children with tears in your heart that tomorrow will be different as you send them to bed hungry. It is to run into the police at nightfall after a full day of casual labor, knowing you only have two choices: to run before they see you or wait to be robbed by law enforcers. It is realizing that it takes a natural disaster causing many deaths for the government to acknowledge people's humanity. Wow, that is profound.
That in a way is the reality of places like of Madare. Literally. Literally, we don't know about Madare until we have to wait for the elections. And then we hear a couple of deaths there. Then we're like, oh, it's Madare again. Why do they like fighting so much? These poor people. Hmm? Now that Raila Odinga is dead, I don't know what they're going to say. But that's really what happens. You know what I mean? Especially marginalization. And when you think about it, and one of the saddest demographics about things about Nairobi is like that realization of 70% of Nairobi, of the population of Nairobi lives on like less than 1/8 of the land of Nairobi, you know? And so this
Wow.
this congestion, this inhumanity has been completely normalized. And yeah, that's why when you hear things like gun cultures and criminality arising, it's really just basically people seeking agency. Yeah.
Yeah. And you also write, we may never sit under the shade of the trees we plant. And I thought that was such an important quote because I think one of the main problems afflicting Kenya, the world, I'm not even just going to single out Kenya to be perfectly honest, is people no longer do things for generations that will be here when we're not, right? Instant gratification is the main thing plaguing everyone without any thought for what about the future generations? What about our grandchildren's children who will never meet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's. Oh God, what does one say to that? It's really this. I guess it's just ignorance, really. You know, what does one say to that? It's really just.
Yeah.
it's. I mean, because like we, life is such a continuum. That's the whole point. I mean,
Yeah.
like, if whether you acknowledge it or not, you know what I mean. You're a product of goodwill.
Yes.
You know, like, it's
Yes.
almost like it's almost like the sun. You know what I mean. The sun doesn't need you to acknowledge its presence. You know what I mean. Life, there's goodwill exists. You know, the reason we exist, the reason we're alive, is a product of goodwill, and and it behooves us as basically to continue. Yeah, and the best teacher of that is basically nature. If we look at nature in its totality, nature is kind of like one of the, and when they talk about especially the green environment, the ecology, yeah, it's like it's a lesson in interdependence. Yeah, yeah, completely.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the tree needs you, you know, to get it off the ground. Then after that, it will take care of your grandkids for you. You know, so complete interdependence, and this is what we have lost because we have moved into the realm of master, right? And
Mm.
we treat all other species as basically, you know, basically our pawns. And this is our illusion, which is why then we're terrible to the planet. Yeah,
Yeah. I remember during COVID when everything shut down and everyone was indoors. It was interesting because here in the United States, off the coast of New York, people spotted whales. Off the coast of California, people were seeing, dolphins and, come to the San Francisco Bay Area. And like things were being seen that had not been seen in people. In fact, some people could not remember it in their lifetimes, right?
right.
And so it's just amazing how quickly nature will heal itself if we
Yeah.
get out of its way.
We're not masters. That's our illusion.
And so in another part of the book, you say that some funerals evolve into history classes and can also be, you didn't use the word character development classes, but that's what I took away from it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the combination of heightened emotions plus a slew of very important decisions that have to be made in such a short window of time that cause all that? Because there's just always, I feel like there's almost always drama,
Yeah.
unnecessary drama. And I can't really put my finger on what it is. For instance, recently, someone passed away and people were chiming in on where she should be buried. And it was just so interesting how, and the people who were chiming in are not in any way related to the family.
Yeah. So first of all, there's the science of it, you know, and
Yeah.
of it, just the science of it, overwhelming emotion, right? Uh, Culturally, for us in the Luo community, we call it mirema. Yeah, yeah. So this kind of craziness, this unruly grief that occurs during funerals. You're like, okay, suddenly people who are just basically reasonably reasonable suddenly seem to just basically become antagonistic. Culture, at least within our cultural context, there's a word for it. So we understand the state. It's just basically the system has been overwhelmed. So then all of the typical, what do you call it, rail guards of decency basically get dropped. So everybody's on the edge. So you really show your true self. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, so first of all, there's just that. And within a cultural context, it was always understood. So this idea of the perfect kind of quiet, stoic funeral is a very kind of Western thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for us, funerals it was always expected. There's going to be craziness, which is why there were elders and there were people to kind of moderate it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it was expected. Mane kit liel. You know, that is the
Yeah.
nature of a funeral. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's as any elder will tell you. Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
expect drama. Drama is part of it because we're the most heightened of emotions. All right. And
Yeah.
this is a time when everybody is basically, it's like the veil breaks and everybody's showing their true self. So that whole moderated politeness of polite society just basically shatters. And that's what we keep going back to because what are we? We're a European funeral where that's the image you've been given, you know, where people are in black and looking all dignified, you know, and the speeches are in order and nobody's speaking out of turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nobody's
Yeah.
getting emotional, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. The curated funeral.
The most emotional event of your life, and you've been told you've been admired for holding it all in. Oh no, he was very stoic. He read that eulogy without even crying. Like, yeah, yeah, good performance. Yeah, but what use is that? Yeah, yeah,
This brings me to the next point, which is people grieve differently, right?
yeah,
I think one of the stages of grief is denial, right? And it's always very interesting to see, just again in the chaotic state of wrapping your head around someone's death, people needing to ascribe a reason and a cause for the death, even though it might not match the medical reason, right? Um, for instance, someone might attribute, witchcraft or say it's medical malpractice, and this person was clearly going to die, right?
yeah,
Didn't matter which doctor they were going to get. And so I think it compounds it for the target, the person who's being accused of quote unquote killing the person, even though
yeah,
they had nothing to do with it. And I think that presents a different layer of grieving for this person because they have to first get over the accusations and then also grieve the actual death of the person. And the manner in which they grieve is also really scrutinized because it's like, oh, they're crying too much, or now they're pretending, or they're not crying, so they must
yeah.
be happy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the classic case for me was always the case of Albert Ojwang, this young man who died quite tragically in police custody, and then his mother of his child, who they were not kind of, I think, officially married at the funeral. She, there's a lot of social backlash in terms of how our grieving process was judged. Once again, when you really think about it, it's really just ignorance.
Mm,
People just don't know better. That's largely what they've been exposed to. So the natural tendency would be for you to operate within this kind of narrow spectrum of what you imagine is reality. Uh,
mm,
so yeah, because then there's this kind of rules of engagement, that have to apply during death. And if you're not following kind of all of this, they go through the checklist of 10. And if you're not following them, then it leaves an amazing room for superstition and speculation, right?
yeah,
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 because they don't have other tools, because if they had other tools of processing that shock and that trauma, then they would apply them. But since they don't, then this becomes a coping mechanism, which is just basically projection, and it's the classic projection of, for example, xenophobia, you know, the fear of the foreigner, where something threatens your existence, exposes it, and then the worst of you then basically blows out, right? That's all projected on this kind of foreigner, and all of your ills are projected on this person. And so that's why it typically happens when you look at kind of where these accusations are made. It's always the most vulnerable of people, It's always the widow, it's always the child, it's always the grandmother who's alone, always the most vulnerable. Yeah, is the one where that projection is made, right? Because there's this complete sense of helplessness and nothing. So what do? You tend to punch downwards. Hurting people hurt others. Yeah,
and it's interesting when you speak of widows. It's very common to, and this is I've heard, especially in Kenya, across many communities,
yeah,
where a man dies and his family moves in and just basically robs the widow, for lack of a better word. They rob her, and so she's left, struggling to raise her children, and they watch like nothing happened.
yeah,
And it's just bizarre to me that people would do that to their own siblings' family.
yeah. Yes, there's a lot of inhumanity amongst us as well. Which is why then a lot of work has to continue to be done. Huh? Just in terms of just holistic healing that has to happen for societies. Huh? Uh, because internally there's a lot of brokenness that we're dealing with, and it manifests in this very inhuman things, especially and of course it's always magnified through the lens of family. If like you really want to have a true picture of the world, just look at what's happening within the family level, you know, and that's when you'll see the meanness at its core display. But ultimately, you also see the opposite emotion and the opposite spectrum, which is complete goodness. Huh? So, yeah, so the idea is always to kind of remember that it the work is constant, and I guess the work of life is it's perpetual repair.
What did you call it? Individualization?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like in finding our wholeness, we can help other people to find theirs as well, huh?
Hmm. You mentioned a sibling who died very young and whose memory is shrouded in silence. And, we're both parents. So obviously
Yeah,
imagining the pain of losing a child is just
yeah, yeah,
something unimaginable. In fact, I don't know any language in the world that has a word for parents who have lost their children, right? We have
yeah,
widows, we have orphans. We don't have a name for parents who've
yeah,
lost their children.
yeah.
Do you think in your family's context that was just, we have to keep it moving, and or do you think there was a cultural aspect to just not talking about it?
Yeah, it's largely cultural, you know what I mean? It's largely
Hmm.
cultural. Like you had other kids, man, move on. Really, it's really that
Mm,
simple. It's in a way, it's that pragmatic,
yeah.
right? It's that pragmatic. Um, and so which is why I started to say that I always used to say that we were six in our family. I never used to say seven, you know,
Mm,
as though like, what do you mean? He lived, he walked the earth. It's not like he wasn't he wasn't he came out, he was alive for
yeah.
6 months. You know what I mean? He has a burial spot, but we never counted him as members of our family. Right through all the funerals, we always say we're six siblings. You
Mm,
know, we never said the seventh. It was only when I was writing this book and I said, "That's my mother. What really? Who's this guy? What is this story?" And that's when she finally told me, and I realized, oh God, I never mourned this brother of mine, and that's why I included him in the book, Gordon Ochieng. It's like the brother I never met. Yeah,
mm,
so it's really just cultural. Yeah, it's really just cultural. The uh the soul is gone, and he wasn't meant to be here long enough, and so people just continue. Yeah, and I just thought to do it different, because I'd seen it happen so many times, and when I realized that the basis of this kind of forgetfulness was in a way basically and it's largely because of the parents particularly involved, because it's a very painful experience. So in the way not to relive that pain, you kind of then project it to the next kids that come up. You know what I mean? So the loss of that's why you find a lot of, like within like the Luo context, there's a lot of names like Howie, which means, like luck, you know,
mm-hmm.
like in the Raila Odinga family, there's Wenwa. Leave this one for us. You know what I mean? There's a lot of Barakas. There's a lot of Bahatis. So then, when people have gone through a lot of loss in terms of like miscarriages in particular, um, or infant deaths, and then the child that comes next after that particular infant death, a lot is projected on that child, right? Uh,
Yeah.
because then they become basically the vessel of all of those other anxieties. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just always very interesting how people cope culturally to
yeah,
just ward off evil,
yeah,
however they see it. And then
yes,
on illness, especially prolonged illness, you write
yeah.
that I found this funny, but I don't know if this is how you intended it to be.
Uh,
Prayers will be delivered in bulk, but for hard cash to pour
uh,
in, one would have to escalate the situation by dying first. And then, if you want to lose friends, fall sick. If you want to be truly loved by your friends, die first. Wow.
we laugh, but it's true.
Yeah, I know, but it's just it's the way it was written that was so funny. Had you just had a recent series of experiences with this, or were you just looking at it over your lifetime experiences?
Yeah, I think it was always because I was in so many committees. Huh? I was in that. I think it was my 20s and 30s when I wrote, because I originally wrote that was actually from an article written in my Manto column, huh? That I kind of picked up and built on. Huh? Um, but it was during that time, and I was in a lot of funeral committees, a lot of funeral committees, and I would always start with, like, we're trying to get people to raise money for this person in the hospital, and you can't get any traction. Nothing at all.
Mm,
The moment that person dies, people are rallying against you for not telling them in time. Like, what do you mean? Everybody with the fight is like, make sure my name appears so that
mm.
are we non-family? So everybody. Everybody knows how much money you gave, and it's all about the harambe, and it's all about,
Mm,
I saw this cyclic pattern happening over and over and over again. And of course, that's satirical in the sense of just to kind of put a balm on the starkness of it, huh?
mm-hmm,
But ultimately, when I was trying to really understand what was going on here, it was that it's like sickness overwhelms us. And it's a kind of helplessness. And especially when you understand it within the African systems. I mean, if you live in the Western world, for example, you can really put your trust in the medical system.
mm-hmm.
Like if somebody goes to hospital, that's generally a good thing. They're going to come, but they're going to be okay. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah,
The medical hospital. You know, in our reality, like a lot of like, what do you call it? Global South realities is
mm,
that where they're kind of dysfunctional health systems. It's like it's 50-50. It's a gamble all the time, you know, and the gamble tends to lead towards the worst outcome. And if you've seen that over and over and over and over again, where you realize that basically people are dying due to a systemic problem, it
mm,
overwhelms the system. So then the only way that you can cope with that is that literally at the point of death, you at least show your solidarity. And in a way, that kind of contribution becomes a kind of a form of insurance, because even you're suffering from the same vulnerability. It could happen to
yeah,
you. So that when it happens to you, at least, at the very least, at least have a dignified funeral. At least he died well. He was buried well. So in a way, that's why the enduring aspect of in the midst of all of this crisis is the funeral Muchango has not died. That's the one thing that, through all of
yeah,
our economic hardships, is
yes.
like somehow.
Money will be found.
Yeah, you put a WhatsApp group and just say, I lost my, they're like, I know it.
Say less. Here's
Say
money.
less.
Yes.
Because we know tomorrow we're going to be in the same position.
Mm,
So it's just
yeah.
basically social insurance. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was reading your book, and I got to this part, I sent a blurb to my friend, and I was telling her, it's interesting that you wrote that, even now that you live outside of Kenya, you are always dutifully contribute to fundraisers because it's important that your name is counted
Mm-hmm.
among the contributions, especially so you're not accused of having forgotten. Uh, he got on a plane and he went to Europe, and now he's forgotten that he's Kenyan.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you touched on a very important thing, especially for those of us who are out here. There's
yeah,
also that extra. Uh, I don't want to call it a burden because it's not really a burden, but there's also that extra pressure to make sure
yeah,
that you're not seen as having forgotten your roots.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
always that pressure, right? And it's almost like you calibrate it so that you don't overcorrect. But it's like, especially even when you're in Kenya, you have to be careful not to be one of those diaspora people who's like, we don't do this in certain
yeah,
country you came from,
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah. So I just thought that was really interesting. So my friend was telling me it's so funny because she is based in Kenya, but she says that every time there's a funeral in the ancestral village, and she's from Busia,
yeah,
her mother calls her and she tells her, we better contribute, we collectively,
yeah,
because and by we she means my friend, um because your day will come too, and you don't want people to not contribute to your
yeah,
funeral.
yeah,
And so, to your point, there's that collective insurance, which is,
yeah,
if I do this for others, they'll do it for me. And especially here in the diaspora, there's also the additional expense of people who want to be buried at home,
yeah.
or who had not said where they should be buried. The default assumption is you need to be taken back to your
Back home.
ancestral home.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's very expensive,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And so people still gather and contribute because you don't know. It might be you tomorrow that needs to be ferried to, in my case, a Lego.
yeah,
But it's just one of those things where it's so interesting how people gather and find money. And in their normal daily lives, it's, oh, this is too expensive, the taxes are too high, oh, someone's dead, suddenly here's money, a lot of it.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
but in a way, it's a really beautiful cultural ritual when you think about it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, of course,
Mm-hmm.
we make fun of it right now. Yeah, but it's a kind of, it's a constant reminder. Like in the Netherlands, for example, where I live, they have this siren that goes off on the first Monday of every month,
Mm.
and you can hear it from, so there are sirens strategically located all around the country, and it's like a war siren, like an air raid siren. And it goes on like for a minute at 12 o'clock, on the first Monday of every month. It just goes off. This siren goes. So the first time, of course, you hear it, you're out of your mind. You're like, what the hell is going on? Is that like,
Mm-hmm.
am I on a set?
Yeah.
Like a movie set, because you haven't
Yeah.
had that thing since one of those kind of World War II movies. But it's kind of, for them, it's always to remind them, as a reminder, hey, you know what? War could happen at any point, So like, don't forget so quickly. Like, we
Mm.
survived a war, we survived an occupation. Right.
Yeah.
And in a way, what this WhatsApp kind of gatherings remind us is that ultimately, no matter how individuated we feel we are sometimes, we're still part of a community.
Yep.
Right. So even though you don't particularly fit into your own family WhatsApp community, for whatever reason, let's say there's some discord there, but there's always some version of a community that you'll be pulled into. It could either be a school alumni, it could be a group of friends, it could be ex-works colleagues, it could be people involved, say, within a particular hobby or kind of activity, but there's always there's always a group that will pull you in, right? And in a way,
Yeah.
that's kind of shows the social sophistication of, for example, the Kenyan society, that irrespective of all of these other challenges that we go through, we're still able to organize socially, regardless of distance. And so at the most important point, which is basically the point of crisis and vulnerability, which is our shared humanity, everybody instinctively knows what to do in a way. Yes, it's very transactional, it's very plastic, but thank God, at least we have that. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a medium to do it.
Mm.
And then on the subject of funerals, you touch on this in your book, which is funerals have become more of performative spectacles nowadays. And so it's more of I recently was watching a video and someone was saying, oh, wow, we went to this funeral and they had like the catering was like top notch. It wasn't like funeral food. And they had entertainment. And I'm like, I mean, if I didn't hear the word funeral, I'd have thought they were describing a wedding. And they were showing like what people were wearing. And I was like, wow. So now when people are going to funerals, you really have to show up. It's not just about bereavement and grief. It's also there's a social aspect to it. That's how did you arrive? Do you look like you just rolled in? You know, I thought that was so interesting, and that ties into the fundraising because some of the bills, the amount of money being spent, it's a lot of money, especially if the family involved is not financially stable. And you think about how much of that money could have gone to the family beyond just giving this person a decent funeral. The extra bells and whistles money could have gone to the family, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't, because it's fashion, It's um we we've just basically lost touch with the whole point of the ritual. Uh so pretty much we've just we're just basically stuck with the symbols, and so a lot of then what now we consider a funeral is literally just basically the theoretics and the symbolism, huh? But the reason why we're doing that, we don't know. It's almost like the Christmas tree. Like we have a
Yeah.
Christmas tree in every house now. Like, where the hell did this tree come from? Why the hell do you need a tree in the middle of on the winter in your house? It's a ritual from somewhere. You know what I mean? If you do your history, you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now it's just a thing we do. We've just completely lost the point of it, including in
Mm.
places like Africa, in Kenya, where there's greenery all through. Yeah, people still chopping trees to put in their houses. Like,
Yeah.
so completely lost touch with the whole point. So this is the sad. I guess this is the manifestation of that we are seeing, where now it just becomes a spectacle. Because it starts becoming less about the actual death process, but more about the spectacle of wellness. Like, yeah, like finally we've got, and then also because there's such few, what do you call it, compulsory social events left,
That's true. Yeah.
that allow that's kind of like a no invite, like everybody's allowed to come in. So it's almost like, for a lot of people, it's like the last dance. you know. So
Mm.
this is, you're finally coming to our family. We're being exposed, so let's just show you who we are. You know, these are the Oyungas. These are the Palas. Let's just show you who you are. Like, we're not just anybody. And this person we're budding is just not anybody. He was a Pala. So let's show you. You know, and so it becomes this. And then what happens is that becomes a fashion. So one person does this, and before you know it, it becomes a trend thing. And become so caught up in the trend, we can't get out of it. And this is exactly what has happened to us. So we're stuck in the trend. Yeah.
And it's so interesting that prominent figures in Kenya, right? Think of recently, Ngugi wa Thiong'o chose to be cremated, right? The Right Honorable Raila Odinga was buried in 3 days or
Yeah.
4 days, I think. And
Yeah.
then CDF Francis Ogola, was it 72 hours or just
Yeah.
slightly more
Yeah.
than that? And then Wangari Maathai was cremated, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know if this kind of, prominent people either being buried very quickly or being cremated, I don't know if that will catch on and people will start to have less drawn out funerals. I don't know. Time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, but also, but I remember those people are really more the exception, right?
They are the exception,
So,
yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and and it's not so much. Like everything has a need. You know what I mean? Things don't exist without needs. Huh? I mean, if they didn't have a need, they wouldn't really persist this long. And so, in a way, when that need dies, society evolves again, right? Because even with this so-called flamboyant funeral, this thing is as recent as 20 years ago.
Yes.
But recently, I mean, and if you really stretch it back, you'd say like literally, these things tend to happen from like in the 2000s. Like in the 90s, we didn't kind of have this kind of funerals at all. You
Correct.
know, yeah. So it's just the 2000. So as little, even as you see, as the kind of the economy changes, the dynamics change. You know, there's a lot of cross cultural changes. You know, in the old days, it was only at kind of funerals in Western Kenya that you'd find catering of food. This
Yes.
is it's a standard thing everywhere. Yeah, it's like a standard thing everywhere. So you're seeing all of this kind of influences happening in many ways. Huh? Uh, even just think about just cremations now. You know, as a as an option. You know, um, it used to be a very exceptional thing. Now
Mm,
you look around, it's there's a visible minority of people who are choosing the cremation route. Huh? You know,
mm-hmm.
all of these things keep on changing, and as society kind of evolves, systems will evolve. You know, like these rituals that we are kind of developing will evolve, because as soon as it hits the peak, like this one, you can see the reason why it's become so exaggerated is because it's about to fall apart. Because the more flamboyant it gets, the more it basically covers its emptiness. All right,
Yeah.
and it will go to a certain point, and then it kind of like all things, implode upon itself, and people then have to pick up the pieces and figure out like, okay, what is the point of this ritual again? A classic example is like what happened to sort of Christianity in the West. You know, it got more spectacular, more ridiculous, that it imploded upon itself. That the next generation had wanted nothing to do with the church.
Some churches are being turned into museums. Yeah.
Exactly, and bars,
Oh,
like
bars. Wow.
and bars.
Okay.
Come to the Netherlands, we will shock you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know I'm going off on a tangent. Wait. So how does that? Sorry, give me a minute, Oyunga. This is new news. I need to process. So a church.
Yeah, you find a church building, and you come in like, wow, there's a nice, beautiful high roofs. Oh, this was a church.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's more than one, and
There's
and
more.
and and dance halls, they become like clubs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Some things I feel like only happen in Amsterdam, but let me not speak for.
So,
Oh. And one of your recent articles mentioned diaspora grief.
yeah.
Yeah. Would you say you've experienced it?
Yeah, in a way, in a way. I mean, the moment you move out of home in a certain part, you always have like what I call like a phantom limb, you know? Like there's always a
Yes.
part of you like, oh, if I was in Kenya, if I was, and the longer you stay away from home, the more that thing grows, especially
Yeah.
if you are to some degree. It happens, I mean, it happens in different ways. For those of us who spend pretty much most of our lives in Kenya and then come out to the West pretty much as older people, uh,
Mhm.
it tends to be more pronounced. right? Because all of our lives is back there, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially we've been asked to rebuild here, you know. And so with the different degrees of success that we have here, we're always then kind of have this kind of uh, life in the rearview mirror kind of approach to life, huh? Because you're always looking back and say, "Oh, what did I leave behind?" What, you know, and the reason, and nobody really wants to live. You know, people live circumstantially. You know, nobody really lives home, huh? You live
Yeah.
circumstantially, so you always have a tendency to look back and say, "What if, huh? What if I stayed?" The other thing is that because of technology, we're completely interconnected. So it's for a lot of us, it's not like we've left home. We're just in a different location.
Correct, physically, but not, yeah.
Yeah, so you never left. So you and a guy in Mombasa are pretty much the same. In fact, more often than not, they see the person in California more often than they see the person in Mombasa.
Yes.
You know, there are
That's
many
true. Yeah.
there are many cases like that.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. The diaspora person is still more frequent than the person who's just basically 400 kilometers away. You know, so yeah, so what I was trying to acknowledge was the unexpressed grief and the multiplicity of things also that people go through in the diaspora that they're not allowed to grieve over because the assumption is that no, you're doing so well, you're in the diaspora, oh, you're in the West, everything must be so great, you know, you lucky one, you escaped. No.
When you say they escaped, I don't know why
Umeomoka.
I pictured someone like sneaking out. Yeah, no, but that's the perception though, right?
Yeah,
That is the
so
perception.
it is, and remember it's highly policed. Look, how many people are applying for visas? Look at the reversal. You know what I mean? In the West, but literally, it's visa on arrival. Nobody's going to stop you from entering Kenya. You could be a nobody. You know what I mean? You could be wiping streets every day there. You know, you show up in the Kenyan
Yeah.
embassy with an American passport. They're going to Kenya. Nobody's stopping you. Yeah? Look at what it takes for us to try and get into the West, even for something as basic as a conference that you're invited to. So then those who are seen to have left, it plays into that narrative of like, wow, look at you, you made it out, man. You must go make it now. And then the way the kind of media dominance that looks as the West as just basically the cradle of, of success.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always like, wow, she's in New York now. Ooh, you're in California. That's all you have to say. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
could be homeless in California, but
Yeah.
when Cali, you know
Yeah.
what I
I
mean?
mean,
Like,
Cali. Yeah.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
Cali. Like, so what? But do you know who I saw in the street today? It's
Yeah,
like,
I know, right?
so yeah. Mm.
It's so interesting that perception, and especially when you go back home and for visits, and there's a lot of Kenyans who are conscious of being back home, having lived out in the West speaker country for decades, especially those of us who came out here to go to school and then stayed. There's a lot of people who like have done 10, 20 years here, and they're just like, okay, it's a wrap, and they move back, and they describe the first 6 months as disorienting, for lack of a
Yeah,
better word.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
you've lived in a place with just, for lack of a better word, order.
yeah,
and you're going back to a place where it's like you just have to be more loose and forgiving in the way systems are supposed to work.
yeah.
And that takes some adjusting too. But once they adjust, they're very happy.
Yeah, it's just it's a different kind of order. I'd like to say, it's just
Yeah.
it's a different kind of order. And yeah, and once you adjust to it, and then it kind of then starts to evolve quite beautifully, in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I was kind of like describing as a grief, because so you. I know another thing I was noticing, and part of the reason why I kind of wrote that, and I particularly, I noticed my character was just male,
Mm-hmm.
because I found, of course, there's a kind of a gender disparity sometimes, the way men grieve and the way women grieve,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of women are usually more communal, and more
Yes.
expressive. So then
Yeah.
they have a lot more, they create organically more safe spaces for themselves. Uh, Men less so. And, and then also, if you look at just general statistics of couples that move to diaspora, men tend to fare really badly.
Yes.
Yeah. women make quicker adjustments, into kind of the new life, quicker integration. Men tend to fare badly, and then in particular countries as well, men tend to be kind of marginalized in a sense. They're always seen as more of like a threats. People then start to live very minimized lives here, but then it's kind of like almost becomes like golden handcuffs. They accumulate out. Um, you're making more money, even though it's like it's a low station job, but it's still earning more than the other guy at the other end. And so you're caught up in this in between world of where you imagine, okay, as a result of this money, I'm supposed to be so you progressing in certain ways, but there's this other reality of life on this other end, which is also just basically keeping you beautifully suppressed. Huh? In dealing with that reality, I like to frame it as a way of also grieving, and the only way people really make it out of it is if you truly look at it as grief and grieve that loss, in order to kind of find something anew in this new world, right? Or do what like some of the people you described are doing is like they say, okay, enough of this world, grieve that idea of what was lost in those years, and then go back home and try and rebuild yourself again. Like find yourself again, find your place within the community. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then you also touch on the rise of individualism, which can lead to grief in solitary confinement and feeling alone. And you say your nephew, Didi, I don't want to pronounce it like the rapper.
Yeah. Didi. Then just say Didi.
Didi. Okay, Didi. Thank you. Because when I was reading it, I was like, no, let's not confuse. So Didi captures the sentiment when he says, you're alone as a man. There's no one coming to rescue you. That sounded so sad to me. Does that resonate with you? Do you think it's a Gen Z thing? Like, what do you think?
It's just a social reality thing. And you can talk to men from across all societies. They'll give you a version of that statement. Huh? It's just generally, it's kind of the perspective of a man's world is quite different. Huh? It's funny. It's just that. It's like you have to live the experience to really understand it. In a way, the social pressure is so real. Like and it's so present that you can be in denial of it, but it's there. It's like the concept of race. You can go around saying, "Oh, I don't see color," for as much as you want, but every so often,
color comes to you.
Yeah, you'll be reminded. It's a spectrum.
Yeah,
and that's what's happening within the social reality of men. That they could say like, "Oh, we're all of these things," but every so often, life knocks in such a way that reminds that, okay, boy, yep, what are you doing for yourself? And so a lot of life, for example, Didi's position, which of course becomes a position of a lot of us, just of course a little bit more stark when expressed from the perspective of a 25-something-year-old, is that, as young men, what you wish for, as young people, what you wish for is to be welcomed, into kind of manhood in a way. And in a way, when I talk about manhood, it's in community, to be received, to be gifted. So as a young man, you as you go through what, and if you think about it within the kind of the African construct, through an age system, so when you go from a boy to a young man, into manhood, you're supposed to be received into this community of men, so to speak, so that then you're always then able to travel, and this same community of men then carries on to community of basically married men or fathers. And then this community of fathers becomes a community of grandfathers, who eventually the community of elders, right? So generally that's how it's supposed to be in an ideal situation. But now, because of the brokenness of our society and of course the impact of colonization, was that a whole bunch of young men arrive at this stage and there's nobody to receive them. They're all alone. So they have to figure it out again by themselves. All right? Over and over and over again. There's nobody to receive them. There's nobody to guide them through. Like, oh, now you're about to get married. This is what's going to do. Then, like, there's nobody just to walk with them. So everybody's just sort of alone because we're an individual society. So over and over again, for most men, the only lesson they're being told is that, and then the backstories that get up is like this self-made story. Me, I was just alone, I was struggling, and then I made it. Me, I just hustle. I just want that. My focus, my work ethic. That's all they're getting. You know,
Mm.
there's no story about saying, "Oh, me was lucky, man. I had like tons of uncles. I had all this people around me, and they've held me right through." You never hear that version of the story. It's always, "I did it all by myself. I did it all by myself." You know.
Oyunga, if I tell you how much what's that expression? It does what to your goat? What's the expression?
Great, you got it. I'm not
No,
sure.
there's like, it just really bothers me when people say
Yeah,
they're self-made.
yeah,
It gets my goat. Yes, is
yeah.
it?
I guess you got.
Yeah, it's just, I'm like, really? So someone gave birth to you, and as a newborn, you just
Yeah,
found
just
your way and you raised yourself
mm,
and you found a school and you went to that school and you found a job or you started a business all by yourself, like a
yeah,
tree in a desert, like a
yeah,
cactus in a desert. Like,
yeah,
it really gets on my last nerve when people say that. I'm thinking, you're
yeah,
not self-made. You're not acknowledging who helped you, but you're
yeah.
not self-made.
Exactly. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
refuse to
yeah.
see.
You also write that grief is its own medicine, but it comes with challenges that can feel insurmountable.
Yeah,
There's a rising, and this is, data that's out there. The number of suicides among men, especially young men,
yeah,
are rising. And I think it ties neatly into what we just talked about, which is that feeling of you're all alone and just societal pressure and expectations.
yeah,
Because a man's worth in a lot of ways in society is tied to his ability to provide.
yeah,
And especially in these turbulent times, if that's taken away, I can see that affecting the core of who they are. And that's why you hear stories of people who lose their jobs and they don't even tell their spouse. They just still wake up every morning,
yeah,
leave the house like they're going somewhere. It's a while before like the wife finds out what's actually happening, right?
yeah.
It's very unfortunate.
Biko writes a beautiful story about it. Jackson
I read
Biko.
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll call you back. Yeah, I think one of the most perfect analogies of that scenario.
And I like how he went into the daily reality of it,
Yeah, yeah,
of,
exactly. Yeah,
dwindling savings,
yeah,
tension,
yeah,
escapism. It was
yeah.
very vivid the way he wrote it.
No, it's really well. Like really, yeah, like he really unpacked human condition there in a beautiful way there. But the thing also about it as well is about this dying process. It goes back to something that you were talking about earlier. Is that is we always talk about it at the point of break. At the point of break glass.
Mm.
So when we talk about suicide, we talk about it at the point of like, okay, what is the last act? We're never able to diagnose and say, okay, when did I actually start? When did I start? When did I literally land on that slippery slope? When did I start slipping? Because that happens way back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we started looking at it a little bit more holistically that way, so as they say in prison, as opposed to telling people that don't give people belts so that everybody's just sagging, huh? Yeah, because yeah, they might do something with their belts, huh? But if you went all the way back and asked the question is, what's bringing them to prison in the first place? You know, if we went back that far back,
Hmm.
I'm asking a rhetorical question, obviously, and the reason we can't do that is that because it basically now it encompasses as we have to look at life communally because this is literally a break in community. People have been left like strays, and what do they have to do? They have to find their ways to belong. And when they're not let in, what do I do? They'll make themselves hard, which is what causes criminality or basically a lot of these addictions that we tend to see, you know.
Hmm.
But ultimately, is there always signs of brokenness within the community, and what we're seeing as quote unquote suicide is literally just the weakest link, you know, telling us. And in fact, if we look at suicide now properly in a great context, it's like it's basically should be a warning system. So by the time you're starting to have a suicide rate increasing in a country, it's a warning system that the whole body is sick, you know?
Yeah.
So we need to be fixing the body. But what do we go about doing? How do we prevent those men from doing that? Then they make it focus and make it a boy issue. No, it's a societal issue. If you keep isolating it to the men only, you'll miss the boat by a river.
I knew someone a long time ago who died by suicide, and he was in the East Coast of the United States. He was Kenyan. and he had come to the United States for college. And I don't know what happened. To your point, a series of things clearly happened. But the result of it was he got on a plane, he flew to Nairobi, checked into a hotel, and died, and left a note for his family and the number to reach them. So when the hotel staff broke in, they found the note and the number, and that's how they knew to call them. And that was so tragic. Um, and it's people back in Kenya, like, why you were already there, you were living a good life, why would he do that, and to your point, there's a lot of isolation, especially if you don't have your community and you don't have people you feel you can talk to, and you don't have friends around you, or an outlet for whatever it is you're going through. Then that's, I think, how those thoughts gather and culminate in the death.
Yeah, and it's been happening a long time. That's just the trigger. It happens a long time, So the brokenness could have happened like literally years ago, and the person was just slipping and slipping, and nobody was quite. And the more and more they try to reach out, and they remain like what I was trying to say about with my brother. It's like somebody's dying, you don't expect them to voice it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's the job of the community to be able to spot it and say, "Hey, Nani doesn't look too well. Can you just have some people hang around them? Huyo jamaa asilale peke yake. Let him make sure he doesn't sleep alone." Usually that was the job. It was a communal watchdog. But that's lost now. So what happens is that I start to go through my problems. I'm screaming for attention. I'm screaming for help. And people, it's like a baby. You're being ignored, 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 ignored. What happens? The baby just stops crying.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they're okay.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're okay. Just stop crying. It's like I could shout my whole lungs here. Nobody's going to come. So I just stop crying. Yeah.
And you write in a recent poem on your website, The Alchemy of Brotherhood. Grief is not a race to be run, but a map to the forgotten terrains of our souls.
Yeah.
And that is so true, because grief comes in waves,
Yeah.
and the triggers are interesting, right? A song, a voice, someone kind
Yeah.
of looks the same as someone you knew
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, like when you really get to understand it, in like like it's almost like a turtle floating in the sea. You've ever seen this? Ever seen these videos of they have this kind of music channels on YouTube, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Where they give you scenes of the ocean,
Yes.
and they just show you a turtle beautifully floating in the sea, and there's all of this stuff happening around it, huh? Uh, and in a way, that's for me, that's how I kind of picture grief. You know, it's like you start to discover aspects about yourself that you never did know existed. And I say, as long as you have loved, you will grieve. Yeah.
Yes.
So if so, in a way, that's why you can't be afraid of grief. That's like telling you to be afraid of love. Like, okay, hold back your affection for this people because they might die, and then what are you going to do with that grief? No, it's the other. It's the opposite thing. It's like love them hard, yeah. So you'll grieve them hard, and by grieving somebody hard, you'll continue to love hard. It becomes one of those, because then now the moment you had with them was not wasted. Yeah.
Right. And they say grief is love with nowhere to go,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk about the way in which deaths are communicated? Um,
Yeah.
how you learned of your sister's death was just that whole. I mean, I'm just gonna let the listeners read the book, but that stuck with me. I've had people, obviously being out here, I've had people pass on in Kenya, and I've heard about it via text sometimes, but it's because they were not close people to me. But
Yeah.
anytime someone has been close, someone has picked up their phone and
Yeah.
called me and told me, right? Because some things just, uh, I don't know if the person who's communicating, they're in shock themselves, and so they don't have the composure to realize, hey, how will this other person receive it? But I've heard enough stories, and now reading your book, that I'm just thinking, I don't know. It's difficult to prescribe this, because obviously it's a moment of shock for people, and so people just instinctively communicate in the way they know best. But on the recipient side, that's really, really brutal.
Yeah, it is, and when I think about it, yeah, that particular one was it was a shocker in a way, because of just the serious lack of emotional intelligence at play there. Um,
Yeah.
but then again, as I say, you understand, which is kind of now the compassionate side of life, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because that person thinks they're doing the best, you know, they're they're keeping you completely informed. They're like, okay, now I'm being a good Samaritan, pretty much, you know. So the thing is that we see when this is stuff that's not ritualized, because typically within kind of smaller, intimate societies, they are kind of guides who are prescribed with these roles. So like for example, you look at them within the Luo cultural context. There's the reason why there's somebody known as the person who gwails, the man who backs, the man who gives the dodge, which is known as the sigware. You know, so then people there's a cultural way of communicating loss and death, and I read about it during my dad's funeral. That when I come to terms with understanding, oh, okay, that's the way we break news of death, right? And we break news of death with the mourning, you know. So we start to mourn fast, and everybody realize, oh, okay, something has happened. It's a time we all assume the mood. It's a time for us to mourn. The problem with this modern age of ours is because now literally we announce death like the same day we're announcing. The way people tell you the daylight saving. Like we have now shifted to 2 hours ahead of Nairobi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same flippancy with which time is communicated, death is communicated.
No
Yeah.
language, no language, no ritualization. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that,
that
and
was
that's just the gap. Yeah.
yeah, that was I was jarring to read. I
Yeah.
was just appalled.
Yeah.
And I was thinking I'm not even the one who was receiving the
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So in a different part of the book, and this was so beautifully written, when you're describing grandmothers, I could literally picture these women. The old
Yeah.
woman in a bright floral dress that falls to her ankles with a matching headscarf, walking with an unsteady gait, lugging a bag full of lamentations. The one with the wrinkled face, the leathery skin, teary eyes, and bad knees. That was so accurately, so vivid. Like I could almost see the woman walking in front of me. You
Yeah.
know, I like the bag full of lamentations because they really do have a bag full.
Yeah, always whining about something.
Yeah, it's like it's always something. And then another part you write, dispossessed by male relatives in succession battles following their spouse's deaths, and also what happens when there is no one left to care for their caregivers. That is such a sobering thought.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've given their lives, taking
Yeah.
care of other people, raising children, grandchildren.
Yeah.
Um, then you write, there's a special breed of women about to exit the scene with an endless capacity to care for others. They are the forgotten grandmothers whose weary hands are holding up our bright skies. They are the discarded ladders that took us over the walls erected to stop our progress, and on whose bent backs we reached new heights and built modern and prosperous lives. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that's it.
it's very profoundly written, and and you're right, they are about to exit the scene.
Yeah, Danny. Everybody has a Danny. Everybody has a
Danny, yeah.
show, a go. You know, yeah. It's the grandmother. And it's a certain generation of women that are they're going. We're seeing the last of them. You know what I mean? In a probably another decade or so, that whole generation would be gone. Would have exited the stage. Huh? Um, and of course, people are products of time. They come from a different time, so they're products of that time.
Hmm.
But I hope to God we don't lose their lessons, uh, because man, they held up so many. And like, it's almost universally. You ask people to speak of their grandmothers from a different age. It's like we'll be describing the same moment.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There could be slightly different cultural nuances. but it's always the same, like this woman who has outlived everybody and just keeps on giving and giving and giving and giving. And she seems to have nothing, when you ask her, like, okay, what does she really do for a living? Really nothing other than just basically caring for people, really. That's what she was known for. I mean, the whole point of that house. I mean, how many movies do you have in America of grandmother characters who raise kids? Endless. I mean, we even have a presidential story with that script. What's Obama's story?
Yeah, and they do it so selflessly too. I mean,
Yeah,
they do have their bag of lamentations, don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
That should be on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I have a bag full of lamentations.
Lamentations.
But they do it so selflessly. And, to your point, I hope people are learning their lessons, and especially in this modern age,
Yeah,
I hope people take the time to sit down with their danis, their shoshos, their
yeah,
grandmas, and just sit down with them and record their life story if they can.
yeah,
Because one thing people don't think about is, when your loved one passes away, you don't have their voice and you don't
yeah,
see them like on camera, on video,
yeah, yeah,
especially, yeah, if you don't take the time to do it intentionally. It's something you don't think about until someone's gone.
yeah,
Then you're thinking, gosh, if I could just hear their voice one more time, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There is something that's called, and this again, when I was talking to the death doula, she said, I think it's called terminal lucidity is the medical term for it, right? When people just before they die become like they have that last oomph. The death doula Archie called it the surge. I think something like that happened to your sister, right?
yeah.
The last time you saw her alive.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because this interesting terminal. What do you call it? Lucidity. Yeah.
Terminal lucidity is what the
Yeah.
medical,
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
term is for it. Yeah.
Yeah. It happens so many times. Of course, this with my sister is the latest. Huh? It's like just when. That's why you always hear that. Always hear that. In hindsight, when culturally how we describe it, is that like there's the classic case of and you see many variations of this story where the person who was about to die suddenly called all of the people together.
Yes.
There are many movies have been made about that thing, huh? And then they talked and they really laughed and everybody was so happy, you know. And then the next day they died, and then it's like people's way of understanding it is like, oh, it's like like he called us to say goodbye, you know. Uh, and that's kind of what I'm trying to describe with my sister, in a sense of that the last month that just before her death is like she's moving on. There's a breakthrough. We're supposed to go to Cuba, like this thing has happened. Like, how do we rebuild? We need to kind of make plans, and and usually it's really that last side. It's like almost like the from within kind of like a lot of spiritual traditions. They say it's almost like the spirit, the ego giving it one last boost like of life, and then boom, letting go. Yeah, because it knows it's going. So like it gives its last it's like its last dance, its last hurrah, and then boom, then it's gone. And so the very deeply, like if there's like a proper death doula, they can tell. You know,
Yeah.
but for most of us, we always look at it as confuse it as a sign of resurgence.
Yes, they're getting better finally.
Yeah, yeah,
You also write about Nyangi that she followed her heart and chose the path less traveled. She trusted her instincts and took leaps of faith. She was a teacher and a mentor, and in death, she left us with the gifts of insight for leading a meaningful life. And you also mentioned that she wanted to take learnings from her condition to contribute to journals and such.
uh,
That's incredible presence of mind for someone who's been sick for quite a while
yeah.
to have, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was lucky. or a friend of mine said, you are blessed. Which is a better way of
Yes.
looking at it. Yeah, yeah, you're blessed to have had something like that as a sibling because they're perpetual teachers. Yeah, even in their most vulnerable state, they're focused on just basically what's the lesson here? What's the lesson of today? What's the lesson of today? Hence the story of Robert Murphy, which is a conversation we have in one of our many long chats in the evening. Huh? And, and we're like, what's the plan? And she gives me the example of this guy called Robert Murphy and how he's basically going through this terminal condition. Instead of despairing, he just started taking notes, and he became a major inspiration for her. So she was really wishing to do the same, especially when we started running across bottlenecks in the kind of cardiology space, and instead of like just despairing, hence the reason one of our famous refrains was, she's called me OP, don't waste time with worry. Worry is such a waste of time. Yeah, that was that thing. Worrying is such a waste of time. So then, how then we repurpose this energy into something more useful? And one of the big things was always like, you're going through the condition, so you're in the best position to describe it. How invaluable would that be to other people? So in a way, since we're not able to do it precisely as we wanted, because we're so busy just living life, which is very ironically beautiful. It's like we set out a whole agenda. We set out like 2 weeks in Entebbe, but we're going to do recordings. We just end up chatting and just, having like gin
Just
and tonics,
living.
just living. It's very interesting, and in a way, I think I ended up doing it with this book, which is now me describing the end process for people who might be traveling, that have been through that season or are anticipating going through the season, right? Yeah, so in a way, kind of, it becomes almost like a guidebook as well. Huh? It's like, oh, I have something to hold on to, sort of like to make sense of like, oh, so it's not just a me thing,
Mm-hmm.
It's happened to others as well. Yeah.
And one of the things that's usually interesting, medically speaking, brain scans of dying people show the memory center of the brain really lighting up. And it's as if the brain, just alongside the last surge, the brain is kind of going through your whole life, like very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in another part of the book, you mentioned when you went back to her apartment, you were looking through, for like some kind of final message or something. And I think that's something that happens very commonly, especially when someone has had the terminal lucidity moment,
Yeah.
because everyone, especially those of us who are not death doulas or work in hospice or, in that line of work, take that as, oh, they're getting better, right? And so
Yeah.
when someone dies, it's shocking because you're thinking
Yeah.
they just went, like no goodbye,
Yeah.
no final,
Yeah.
and the thing is, death comes to us all and we don't know when it will come. And so how many of us have quote unquote a final message written
Yeah.
somewhere,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you really become like a detective, and which in a way, kind of what I became, um, because, and of course all of it is subject to my interpretation. Yeah, because it's subjective completely. But hopefully, at least I have a skill set as an anthropologist and as a writer, so at least I'll try and add some credibility to it, and at least be thorough with what I'm trying to say. But ultimately, what I'm really trying to do is make sense of the complexity of death. You know, in that particular case, there's two ways of looking at it for me. There's what we typically see as the classic message, like somebody left you a message,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, like almost like in a sense of a will, or a last note in the people who die by suicide, for example. But for most people I've found, and this is within my own kind of family examples, and for those who are the ones I've lost that have been close to me, is that you can always piece it together based on their last moments. Because then if you look at some of the people's life with real open eyes, you can see people always preparing for the end, right?
Yeah.
So there's always a sign here and a sign there and a sign here and a sign there. And the signs are all around us. And if we were alert enough to us, would have seen it. But since we're kind of not quote unquote spiritually trained to be able to kind of decipher this, it always happens quote unquote in hindsight. So for me, what I'm doing, knowing how profoundly astute my sister was, I knew there was stuff. She wouldn't have left it explicitly, but she figured out you're smart enough to figure it out. I mean, so
Yeah.
go go through my diary or something, you'll find something there.
Yeah. You're a smart guy. You'll figure it out.
I've thought about this.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up finding that point. Yeah. That's how I ended up finding that point. Yeah.
And then you touch on ancestral veneration through naming and sharing memories. So you mentioned you yourself are named after your uncle, right?
My grandfather. My
Your
grandfather.
grandfather.
Yeah.
Pala literally means knife. What's the story there?
So first of all, it's a name. It's like my grandfather's name, my maternal. So I'm named after two grandfathers. My maternal grandfather, basically my mom's father, and then and my dad's uncle, his father's brother. Yeah, older brother. Pala itself is just literally a name. It's a family name that's been carried on with three generations of Pala now, of that particular name. And Oyunga also goes back three generations. Yeah,
What does Oyunga mean?
Oyunga Gima Yungo, the thing that shakes.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So then now, of course, then as life would, as destiny would have it, I end up being a writer who's writing about this provocative thing. So in a way, kind of my names, if literally translated, become the what do you call it, the shaking knife with a piercing blade or a sharp blade. You know what I mean?
yes.
Like the shaker, who has a sharp blade, or the one who slices through, like what a timeless place, huh? So in a way, my names ended up becoming quite metaphorical, but they were just basically just names. They were just family names that I
Okay.
inherited. Yeah.
I feel like that translation of your name should have been at the head of your Man Talk columns because
Yeah.
maybe it would have. I think it would have prepared people.
Context, like you guys, I wield a knife.
Were you ever confronted face to face during those days, or was it all just electronic?
No, face to face, many
Oh, face to
times,
face as
many
well.
times. Oh, the streets were hostile in those days. Oh, Jesus. I used to say, man, the satire used to fly right past people's heads.
It was very clearly satire to me, so I didn't understand. Like, are
No, no,
people
no.
actually taking this literally?
No, people took it quite literally. Like, why do you hate us? I'm like, oh, God. Another one?
Oh,
Yeah.
and so obviously the writing process, I imagine, how many years did you take to write this book, start to finish?
I, I would say loosely 3,
3,
but of course
okay.
I've been thinking about it for much longer,
Yeah.
in different forms, but really 3, like literally. So I'm working on it already before my sister dies, as the ones we lost, and it's supposed to be exclusively about men. So the section that has, for example, that has Benjamin Aimba, Ojuan and Whispers, was the forgotten ones. Basically, was kind of how I was formulating the book. Just basically I was looking at then lost within kind of the male spectrum in society, and then I was looking at this kind of figures that then helped give me a kind of a sense of a totality of the loss. Different people representing different eras and different archetypes, so to speak. But then my sister dies and my grandmother dies, and I say, okay, I think I'm going to include the women in, and that's what changes the nature of the book. you know. So, and that's hence the reason I was saying I was very good at observing death that happened afar. Like, oh, it happened to those guys, and it's very easy to analyze. Shikuku over there, that person over there.
That Shikuku story was hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, but then I couldn't examine my own. With the passing of my sister, I'm forced to really say, oh, but you, what's your story? Yeah, you're very good at describing others, but what's yours? What were you feeling? Yeah, and that's what changed it. Yeah.
And how did it feel when you were done? Was it cathartic?
Yeah, in a way, there's a lot of relief, because it's depths, to be able to swim through to get something out like this, And thank you very much for the description you gave at the beginning of this. So, uh, yeah, because it becomes more than a book. Um, it really becomes really, I guess, it's almost like ritualization for me. It's the gift of you. You have to bath all of this knowledge and put it in a way that's actually accessible. At the same time, you have to honor all of these people, and you see, I've honored a lot of people there. I'm not talking about, it's like,
You have, yeah.
yeah, many people. Like literally, it's almost like it's short of crying cry for my country, cry my beloved country. It's almost
Mm-hmm.
like a cry, like a proper lamentation. Um,
Yeah.
and and to really write that, you really have to lament. Like you really have to go to that depth of that lament in order to produce something like this. And to allow myself to do that over a long period of time, which means like literally 2 years of just in mourning. For every person you write, you have to kind of mourn them properly. I really allowed myself grief, And once I understood that, I said, okay, maybe I have now a message to share because I'm no longer afraid of it. Yeah.
I think the English word for that is like keening, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of slightly deeper than grief.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you have to
Yeah.
really, really dig deep. And
Yeah.
the Mexican culture, and actually not just Mexico, I think it's native. Think of people who are descended from the Mayans.
Yeah.
They have this tradition called Dia de los Muertos. And
Yeah.
Dia de los Muertos, directly translated, means the Day of the Dead.
Oh
And
yes.
in
Yeah.
their culture, you're truly dead when no one remembers you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens is every year on the Day of the Dead, they have this, it's called an ofrenda. It's an altar, and you put the person's photo, and if the person liked whiskey, you put whiskey, like, because they believe on that day that people rise again, and then you
Yeah.
remember them. And yeah, it's a very beautiful tradition. And I
Yeah.
think many cultures across the world have something similar. I'm Luo as well. And
Yeah.
so, we have the naming after ancestors thing. And
Yeah.
and you are that person. And I think you allude to that in your book when you were
Yeah.
younger and your grandmother would call you her husband. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? But now you understand it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was named after my dad's mom, and he'd call me mama, and so it was this interesting paradigm of I'm your daughter, but I'm also your mom, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a very beautiful culture. And
Yeah.
the bookmark, I really liked the quote, "To live is to die. And while we must all die, not all of us learn how to live."
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
beautifully written. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. That was. It's. I mean, hopefully that's what I ultimately communicate. Because when you start saying, "Oh, it's a book about death," and I thought, no, not really. It's really a book about life. Yeah, death is just a doorway. It holds up a mirror because the moment we come, what's the first thing that happens when it happens at the point of death? We all reflect backwards. It's like it's very rewind. You know, let's go back to the beginning. How did this story begin? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's always a reminder for us, tell us that hey, each one of us has this version of this end. So live. Like live, 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 live. Don't forget to live. You know, and 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 death is always a reminder. It's almost like death is always whispering to us in the ear, like, live, live, I'm coming for you, live, live. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, and that's the one thing people forget. They just exist. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. And not necessarily the authentic selves, but what
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people expect them to be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you?
God, I'm gonna be with social media and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's what you mean. Not
Not your
physical.
house
Not
address, please.
physical. God, I'm so
Please do
old.
not share that.
I'm so old school. I'm like, yeah, literally, I don't know if that's a good idea. But yeah, but basically, I guess I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Surprise, surprise.
Oh, you're on TikTok.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm
I'm not on TikTok
feeling
myself.
very progressive here. Feeling very progressive. You know,
Yeah.
my Gen Z nephews are very impressed. Mm.
Well, I imagine. Yeah. I think I need to join so I can impress mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I publish on my website oyungapala.com, like literally weekly. I have like a weekly blog that I maintain. I'm also on Substack under Oyunga Pala, and yeah, LinkedIn if you're into that kind of, I don't know. Yeah, if you're part of that
Yes.
network,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm also on LinkedIn, and I publish all my stuff. What I try and do is like I operate like a traditional columnist, which is why I just basically give away free knowledge every week, and that's kind of what it just keeps me sharp. And I come from a columnist tradition. So in a way, as columnists, you always have to be writing.
Always be writing. Yeah.
So I kind of try and maintain that, and at least these days, we've been kind of liberated from mainstream spaces, and we're able to kind of find agency within our own spaces. So yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
my central home is oyungapala.com,
Okay.
and you can find me on pretty much every major social media channel. Yeah, under that name, Oyunga Pala. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for making the time. This was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for all the work you do.
No, thank you. That was a really thorough interview. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much for the honor you're giving the book, the time you've taken, just and helping me reflect in this beautiful way. Wish you all the best with this podcast as well. Layered wisdom. It really feels like that. Yeah, I like it.
This podcast would not be possible without our guests. So thank you for trusting us with your story. And to our listeners, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to us. We truly appreciate it. Have you ever had something happen to you that affected the way you live or left a lasting memory? Or is there someone who had a memorable impact on your life? We'd love to hear from you if you're open to sharing your story. Please know that your comfort is important to us, and we welcome you to share your story in your own words, however you're most comfortable, whether it is under your own name or under another name that is not your real name. Please send us a message on Instagram at Layered Wisdom Podcast or via email at layeredwisdom@gmail.com. I have a favor to ask. Please help us grow our Layered Wisdom community. Tell a friend about us. Follow this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Layered Wisdom Podcast. Goodbye.